your enjoyment. A tale of suspense. We take pride in presenting Bill Russo's Twisted Tale. The Observer. Now, Raymond, your host.
Hello. There is a dark chamber, hidden in the mind of every person. It is where their darkest secrets are kept, hidden from friends, neighbors, and even themselves. For some people, the door to this secluded room is slammed shut and locked tight. For others, the gateway never fully closes, and the horrors come back again and again, with increasing frequency until they take a rope, knife, a gun, or perhaps too many pills, in a fatal attempt to seal the portal. The tale that follows is of a man whose dark chamber of unforgivable sins is firmly locked, even to himself. And now, Bill Russo's story. The Observer. Chapter 1. An observer must observe. I am an observer. I obey the rule. An observer must observe, and not get involved. So when I saw the little white squirrel on top of a fallen log, I knew that I was supposed to ignore the hawk that was flying above it, in ever-decreasing circles. With only 95 years on the job, I had little rank or privilege to do otherwise. You could argue that saving a tiny rodent-like creature hardly qualifies as interference. And I would agree. But that does not mean that the boss would. It is true that I saved that scarlet cardinal without consequences. It's now in a cage in my room. It fell from the nest and had a broken wing. For weeks, the valiant parents stood guard and brought it food in hopes it would soon grow strong enough to fly and go back to the nest that it had shared with 3 siblings. While one parent tended to the trio above, the other was constantly at the side of the injured one. Tenderly it was fed with food transferred from the beak of mommy or daddy, depending who was on duty. Danger arrived one morning in the form of a 5-pound osprey. It strayed from its usual lakeside feeding grounds, and with grappling claws extended towards the little bird, poised to carry it off using the 4 sharp hooks in each claw. The mother saw it first. She shouted, "Chip chap! Weet weet deet-a-deet! A deet-a-deet weet weet!" She screamed her alarm and then flew down to the side of her mate. They stretched their wings out as far as possible, puffing up the feathers to make them seem larger. Together their wingspan of 2 feet matched that of the demon. But the combined weight of 4 ounces did not even qualify them for a bantamweight fight, let alone a battle against a heavyweight monster weighing almost 100 ounces. And yet when the male redbird thrust out his chest, and the onyx mask on his face was highlighted by a sharp beak twisted into a grimace, the keen-eyed osprey took notice, and slightly checked the speed of its dive. A second twinge of doubt quickly followed, when he noticed that the grey mask of the female cardinal also had the same corkscrew-shaped beak. The mated pair of cardinals bravely flew towards the rapidly descending predator. The eagle-like bully soared close enough to nearly lose an eye to the slashing blades of the crimson tandem, before deciding to go back to his regular diet of helpless fish that do not fight back. I watched all this, as a good observer must, never stepping in even when it looked as though all three birds plus the babies in the nest would end up as the osprey's breakfast. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is titled, "The manner of his death was uncertain." One week after the crisis, the youngsters took their first test flight. All went well. With a last glance at their parents, the three little birds went out to make their own way in the world and renew the cycle of life. Ever mindful of duty, the pair, who had mated for life, waited for the child to flap his wings and fly away. He flapped furiously, but did not get a fraction of an inch off the ground. It was his broken wing, never properly healed. It was as functional as a fallen log. The parents stayed for 3 more sunrises by the side of the young one-winged redbird. Finally they had to leave as it was time for them to restart the cycle. Soon they would start their next nest, and would have 2 to 4 new fledglings to feed and care for. One Wing, as I now called him, was alone in the harsh world and would soon lose his life to a wandering feline or perhaps a random hawk. The manner of his expiration was uncertain, but not the fact of it. I had to step in. What harm could it cause? I had to give him special treatment. I took in One Wing and he became the most handsome cardinal I have ever seen. His hue was of the deepest scarlet, with a crest that was high, regal, and sharply defined above the shiny sepia mask surrounding his beak. A fine singer, he entertains me day and night with a variety of pleasing notes and sounds that often mimic human words. What, wow, wow, wow. Hooloop, hooloop, hooloop. He sings using his favorite phrases, often repeated in definite patterns.
That's the end of Chapter 2. Raymond will return in 2 seconds with Chapter 3. The third chapter is appropriately called Three-Legged Chester.
A few months afterwards, I again broke the rules by interfering. This time, it was a land turtle, the size of a dinner plate. He had a snaky head with a yellow throat, and was dappled on the underside by splashes of red, yellow, and orange. The poor thing had been struck by a car. I found him more dead than alive by the side of the street. His right hind leg was missing. A three-legged turtle can hardly survive any better than a one-winged bird. So I took him in. I had to give him the special treatment. Slowly I nursed Chester, as I called him, back to health. In summer he stays in a little square, fenced in for him with chicken coop wire. He has a miniature wading pool, a few smooth rocks to sun himself on, and an ample supply of food, both natural and some which is provided by me. During the cold weather, Chester lives indoors in an aquarium where he happily munches on lettuce, bits of hamburger, and the occasional dab of bacon. Later on, I similarly acquired a few other distressed creatures, such as a three-legged cat with no tail, and an old dog. He was a sight-hound who went blind.
That's the end of chapter 3. We have painted a pretty rosy picture for you up to now. But things begin to change as we move on. In a moment, Raymond will return with chapter 4. It is titled, In World War II, an observer interfered. Once again, here is your host, Raymond.
Thank you, Gabrielle. It is true that there have been cases where observers have interfered. The most notable case was during the 1940s when the world was fighting the second installment of the war to end all wars. 100 million men put on uniforms during the long period of battle from 1939 to 1945. Observers were on duty all around the globe to monitor the action. They were told to observe, but never to interfere. They came from the air, the sea, and the land, and before the final shot was fired, 60 million people died. 20 million soldiers, 40 million civilians. A wounded soldier from the alliance of the US and the UK held off 6 tanks and hundreds of Nazis for more than an hour. He was atop a burning vehicle called a tank destroyer that was just moments away from blowing up. He kept a line of fire going from the machine gun turret, killing more than 200 enemy soldiers and forcing the tanks to withdraw. The observer on duty in Germany that cold winter's day felt compassion for the brave soldier, but remained true to the directive. He did not interfere. Not until the concussion from 2 mortar shells knocked the American GI off his feet. The Nazis by then had closed to within 20 yards. The observer laid unseen hands on the little warrior and helped him get back to the machine gun. The weapon was unloaded and the badly bleeding soldier was unable to reload it. The invisible observer reloaded the weapon and the soldier was thus able to lay down a new rain of hellfire on the disbelieving Nazis. For his heroics that day, the Allied forces awarded the baby-faced infantrymen every single medal that they possessed. As for the soldier, he never knew that the observer had stepped in to help him. I have been told that the observer was given a mild reprimand, but he was not dismissed from his position as an observer. And so ends this chapter.
You are watching The Observer, written by Bill Russo. Chapter 5. The observer gets a mysterious visitor. Now back to the story.
except for rescuing injured animals. I have always been a good observer and have never interfered. This time it was different. The white squirrel was not injured like the other creatures I rescued. But if I did not give it special treatment, the beautiful snow-white creature would surely have fallen to the razor-sharp claws of the hawk. I had to rescue him and give him special treatment. Do you understand? The old man, who called himself an observer, was speaking to a middle-aged man in a black pinstriped suit who sat across from him. They were in the cafeteria of the assisted living facility that was the old observer's home. The hard-faced man in the suit was listed in the facility's records as head of the HR department of the firm that had once employed the 95-year-old retiree. He had been summoned to the home because of the old man's pets. The rules prohibited residents from having dogs or cats, or even small birds. "I am leaving now, old friend," said the man in the suit. He spoke with a quiet, raspy voice that did not seem to be compatible with his oversized, muscular frame. "I don't think the boss will be angry at you for saving the white squirrel. Good luck. I will see you soon." The man in the suit walked briskly from the cafeteria to the building's main office, where the facility's manager was waiting to speak with him. "Mr. Shade, I am Superintendent Carter. I am sorry I had to call you, but really, it's just becoming too much. I let him have the bird and the turtle. Then he got the three-legged cat and the sight hand that went blind. Now he wants a white squirrel. Stop." "Enough," said Mr. Shade, looming large with his flop hat, sunglasses and pinstripe suit. "How has he disrupted your establishment? Has he harmed any of the other residents? Do you consider him a threat?" "No, Mr. Shade. He is fine with everyone. In fact, he really does not speak to anybody. He doesn't say much, he just watches everyone. Just stares vacantly at the other people living here." Yes. He's under some sort of a delusion that he is something called an observer. He thinks he is a member of a secret organization and that he has been directed to observe things and to observe people. I would suggest to you that this is a harmless thing. Your company is being paid well for the service you provide. Today, I am recommending to you that you consider it so. I strongly suggest that you allow him his eccentricities, since they do not affect anyone but himself. I trust this settles the matter. Good day." Something in the manner of Mr. Shade and the quiet, confident way he carried himself prompted the manager to abandon his carefully prepared argument and to simply nod his assent, wondering if he had given in too easily to the implied threat of the big man in the slouch hat. It was not so much what he said. It was instead the grim, forceful look on his face. His countenance was like that of a skilled warrior who could appear calm on the surface, yet with little provocation, instantly explode into a maniacal fury. Superintendent Carter decided that he had made a wise decision in agreeing with Mr. Shade. And so ends Chapter 5. Up next, Chapter 6. It is titled, Work Makes Us Free. Shade pushed open the facility's exit doors, without waiting for them to part automatically. As he reached the sidewalk, his car pulled up to the curb. He didn't wait for his driver to open the rear door, yanking it quickly ajar. He sat down next to Schaefer. "Take us to headquarters," he instructed the driver. "How'd it go? Is he the guy?" wondered Schaefer. "Did you take him out? If not, when do we get him?" "Enough. No more." "Schaefer, it's over." "Enough. The guy is 95 years old. He's non-compos mentis. Daft. Bonkers. He has lost his faculties." Okay. I get it. Schaefer barked. "The old guy is nutty as a fruitcake, but so what? If he is our guy, we have to live up to our motto." "Schaefer, our motto in German it is, Arbeit macht frei. Work makes you free." It was written at the gate leading to the concentration camp, where my grandparents were killed. Yours too. "Listen to me, Shade," said Schaefer. "When we joined the organization and swore to hunt down Nazi concentration camp killers, it was that very work that made you and me free. It doesn't matter if the guy is 95 years old or 106. If he's the guy, he must die. We must take him out. That is our work, Mr. Shade, and our duty." "Schaefer, listen to me. The war is over. It has been over for more than 70 years. We have to put it behind us. The guy believes he is an observer. He thinks special treatment is saving lives. He does not remember that in 1941 Hitler put him in charge of special treatment. That's what Hitler called the extermination of 6 million people. Special treatment. If we take out the old guy, that's not going to bring them back. I think that from now on, instead of chasing down the last of the old killers, our group should just focus on keeping people aware of what happened." "You mean we should forget about the few remaining Nazis and focus on telling the world to never forget what happened?" said Schaefer bitterly. "That's it," replied Mr. Shade. "No more work. No more killing to set us free. Our new motto should be, remember the Holocaust. Never again. Never again." Schaefer scratched his head in disbelief, and then reached inside his coat. He fingered the Glock in his shoulder holster and pondered using it twice. Once for his partner, and once again for the observer. Arbeit macht frei. Work makes us free. And so closes the story of a Nazi officer, hounded and tortured by regret and remorse, until his slowly dissolving mind retreated into eternal confinement in the darkest chamber of his rotted brain. This is your host Raymond. hoping that you have enjoyed Bill Russo's production. The Observer.